Hello there, and welcome to today's episode of the EdTech Podcast. My name is Monica Burns, and I am so glad that you're here to join me today. If you want to make the most of education technology, aka EdTech, well, you are in the right place. My goal has always been to help make EdTech easier and give you ideas you can try yourself, share with a colleague, or bookmark for later in the school year. Every Tuesday here on the EdTech Podcast, you'll hear stories from my time in the classroom, the work I do now with schools and districts, and my travels to different EdTech events. Get ready for solo episodes where I share some quick tips and stories, and interviews full of practical ideas and stories from new guests each month. If we mention something you'd like to check out, make sure to click the link. You'll find it in the episode description or the summary area where you're listening to this podcast, or you can find every episode and all of the resources we mention by going to classtechtips.com/podcast, or by going to classtechtips.com and just clicking on the EdTech Podcast button at the top of the page. This episode is sponsored by my EdTech Club, a membership designed to help K-12 educators save time and simplify technology integration. When you join, you'll get instant access to dozens of months' worth of content from the past couple of years, plus new masterclasses, guides, and resources each month. It's all self-paced, so you can dive in whenever it works for your schedule. Head to easyedtechclub.com to learn more and sign up. That's easyedtechclub.com for all the details. This week's episode is titled Creative Ways to Help Students Review Content. And I'm bringing this episode to you in the summertime because we often think of reviewing material or helping kids review new material when we approach the end of a unit of study. But it can be very valuable to start a new unit of study with this in mind. It can save you time by helping you think about ways to set up students for success right from the jump. So if you're planning the first or second unit of the new school year, I hope this episode feels like it's hitting your Spotify or Apple Podcast feed at just the right time. We know that teaching students effective study tips can help them become independent, lifelong learners. There may be a tip or strategy you learned as a student that you took all the way through your graduate school work. And so when students know how to organize their learning, review material efficiently, and make the most of EdTech tools, they can gain more confidence in their abilities and build plenty of independence as learners. And that's true of all ages. So introducing study tips for kids can help them take charge of their learning. It can make it easier for them to retain information, apply their knowledge in different situations, and of course, you can create and model these experiences for them really in any subject area. So today we're going to look at a handful of strategies and study tips for students. We're going to look at some favorite tools and ones that might be familiar already in your tool belt, or ones that might sound kind of like something else you're already using. And then I would say just stick with what's in your tool belt and just apply the strategy or tip to your favorite tool. In today's episode, we'll look at things that you can build into regular routines. Maybe you do it every unit of study, so starting off fresh at the beginning of the year is always nice. Or maybe it's things you do every once in a while or in response to some of your observations over the course of the first few weeks or first few months of the school year. So as we dive in today to this list of study tips, these ones that I am spotlighting for you, like I mentioned, feature some favorite EdTech tools, but of course, substitute, right, with whatever's in your tool belt. I've got just shy of a dozen strategies for you, and I'm going to mention some tools and, of course, some resources along the way. You can find all of these things in the show notes for today's episode. Or, of course, if there's something you're struggling to find, you can always send me a quick message. Just reply to my newsletter with the "what was that thing?" or "tell me more about this." Or, of course, you can message me on Instagram. I'm pretty quick there with my Instagram DMs too. So without further ado, let's jump into this list of tips and strategies to help kids review content. First up is to make a vocabulary journal. You can use a handful of different ebook tools. Those of you who've been around for a while know I've done some work with the book creator team. They're one of my favorites. And you could use a tool like that to develop a vocabulary journal. They've got a bunch of remixable templates that make that super easy. But of course, kids can make a vocab journal in lots of places. Maybe they use PowerPoint, or they use Keynote, or they use Google Slides, and they can create a digital glossary with definitions, images, example sentences that relate to vocab. So when I said earlier that this episode going live in the summertime, when you might be planning new units of study, as opposed to like the last few weeks of a unit when you might be thinking about review, this is going to help set up kids from the start of a unit as they're exploring new vocab. Next up is to create flashcards for review. You might use a tool like Note, KNOWT, to generate personalized flashcards for study sessions that you share with students. I had the chance to spend time with their team at the TCEA conference earlier this year and was super impressed with their tool. They're based in New Jersey, not far from where I live, even though I first met their team in person in Texas. So this is a tool that, for my conversations with them, I learned is really popular with students at the secondary and higher ed level to use independently. So in addition to teachers using it, it's one that they have a lot of student users, which I thought was interesting too. So kids can quiz themselves, track their progress. And so if you're looking for something a little different, we're just scratching the surface with all the things this tool can do, but it might be a good fit for creating some flashcards for review. Next up is to use a chatbot as a tutor. Now, of course, you may use chatbots yourself. You may not use chatbots with students, depending on permissions or what's available at your school or district. So thinking as you, as the chatbot interactor, you can use a chatbot, maybe one like ChatGPT or Gemini, to help break down or explain challenging topics in detail. And you can share summaries with students too. So if they are using a student-friendly chatbot, maybe they engage in a back and forth conversation to clarify some concepts and reinforce learning. Or perhaps you are the one using the tool, gathering some quick summaries, doing some fact checking, or helping break down big ideas. If you head over to the free stuff section of my website, there's just a button at the top that says free stuff and favorites. You'll find an ebook I put together with some prompts for chatbots that might be of interest too. Next up is to generate AI enhanced images. You can create some AI enhanced images using tools like Adobe Firefly's AI image generator to help visualize ideas for students. I'm a fan of theirs, done some work with the Adobe education team, but of course you could use Canva's AI image creator, their Magic Media, plenty of options. Well, no matter what tool you choose, this could help kids connect visual representation to key concepts for some deeper comprehension. If they use the image generation feature themselves in creative tools for kids like Adobe Express, then they could practice writing their own prompt and see their vocabulary words in action. So plenty of ways to make this your own. So far, our tips include making a vocab journal, creating flashcards, using chatbot as tutors, and generating those images with the help of AI. Next up, you might develop some practice activities with the help of a chatbot, maybe Gemini or Claude. For example, you might want to reinforce vocab or other key terms, and you might ask for some help developing some exercises or practice activities that can help kids apply new terms in different contexts. So for example, say you've got a big vocab list or an overview of concepts, and you're not quite sure how to make an activity that connects back to, say, a student interest. You might ask a chatbot for some help by giving it the list of vocab or key terms and then sharing some of your students' interests. Now, next up is a favorite. You might have seen this on the blog earlier this year, which is to use readers' theaters for extra vocab practice. Now, you might use a chatbot to do this, or you might create your own from scratch. But acting out ideas through role playing might just help your students really internalize information that they then would later recall or just apply more effectively. So in the blog post I'll link out to in today's show notes, there are some prompts I've put together for making a reader's theater, which is basically something like create a reader's theater for a group of students in this grade who are studying this vocab list so that 2 or 3 people can act out, right, a scene together. So you can really customize that, of course, just a general prompt idea for acting out some key concepts. Next up, you might have students make a study video. They could use a video creation tool like Adobe Express or Clips or iMovie to create a short study video where they explain vocab words or break down complex concepts. This strategy allows students to really talk about their understanding in a creative way, and it's a really powerful tool. I've led a handful of workshops this past school year for the Adobe education team in New York City. They've got this crazy big office in Times Square where you can just see all the billboards. You can actually see where the ball drops. It's pretty wild. And so it's been super fun, not just being able to visit that space a handful of times, but working with teachers and kind of showing them what's possible for student creators, and making a study video might be something you want to explore. Now, next up, you might decide to listen to a conversation about a resource and share that conversation with students. So earlier this year on the blog, I shared Illuminate, might have been December actually. I shared Illuminate and how you could use this free tool from Google to bring text-based content to life. You can add an article. So you basically hit their little plus sign on Illuminate. You add an article that you know your students are going to read, and it will share audio. So it creates this like pseudo conversation. It's not 2 people talking, but it's like 2 robot avatars, and they talk about that article or that piece of text that you added. So it's a great way to have some supplemental audio content that kids can listen to as they review material you might have originally given them in print. Brisk Teaching, if you've used Brisk, they've added a podcast option to their tool also. So I just love this. I modeled Illuminate. I've modeled it for a handful of different groups this year, and the feedback's been really good from educators. So that's one I would start with. But of course, if you're using Brisk, you might want to check that out too. Next up, you could create some visual explanations as a way for students to share their thinking and then have review material to share with their peers or their classmates. So you could introduce an EdTech tool that lets you do a screen recording, maybe ScreenPal, maybe Explain Everything, and kids can then make a step-by-step video walking through difficult concepts. What I like about this is they can record over their screen with these kinds of visuals. So they might have a sketch that they've done or an image that goes along with what they're talking about. And maybe those videos they make are just for them, or perhaps they decide to share that with others. And of course, those review videos could totally be an assessment for you to check for student understanding also. So these are just a few of my go-to tips with creative ways to help students review content. You might make a plan for this at the start of a new unit and then change it up a few times over the course of this school year. So let's finish up this episode like we always do with a little bit of a roundup, a few key points to make this EdTech easier. Use EdTech tools like digital flashcards and AI-generated images to reinforce learning. Encourage students to create study videos and vocab journals for deeper comprehension. Leverage chatbots as study assistants to explain concepts. Generate practice activities like readers' theaters to help students review new information. Remember, you can find the show notes and full list of resources from this episode, including some of the blog posts and tools that I mentioned today, by going straight to easyedtechpodcast.com and finding today's episode, which is number 327. This episode is sponsored by my Easy EdTech Club, a membership designed to help K-12 educators save time and simplify technology integration. When you join, you'll get instant access to dozens of months' worth of content from the past couple of years, plus new masterclasses, guides, and resources each month. It's all self-paced, so you can dive in whenever it works for your schedule. Head to easyedtechclub.com to learn more and sign up. That's easyedtechclub.com for all the details. Thank you for listening to this new episode of the Easy EdTech Podcast. I love creating new episodes for you each week, but I could use a bit of help spreading the word about the podcast. Can you leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast app? Spotify will let you tap on the stars, and Apple Podcasts will let you tap on the stars and leave a 1 or 2 sentence review. Thank you so much for taking this extra step. It helps other educators find episodes like this one when they're searching for EdTech tips.